What if the biggest mistake in football history is the way we count greatness? What if, while you're busy counting goals, records, trophies, you're actually missing the one thing that decides everything? Before we go any further, take 1 second, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear is not another Messi versus Ronaldo debate. This is a confession, a rare one, from a man who shaped dynasties, crushed legends, and never spoke lightly. Because when Sir Alex Ferguson finally broke his silence on Messi and Ronaldo, he didn't choose sides. He questioned the entire way we understand football. And once you hear his logic, you may never look at goals the same way again. To understand why these words hit so hard, you need to understand who is speaking. Sir Alex Ferguson is not a YouTube pundit. He is not a former player chasing relevance. He is the architect of one of the most dominant eras football has ever known. Across nearly 3 decades at Manchester United, Ferguson faced every type of genius: explosive strikers, elegant playmakers, ruthless winners. He coached Ballon d'Or winners. He destroyed great teams. He built systems that lasted longer than stars. And during the Messi Ronaldo era, while the world split into camps, Ferguson stayed silent. Meanwhile, the numbers exploded. Lionel Messi, at 38, still topping charts, still dictating games with 71 goal contributions in a single season across competitions. Cristiano Ronaldo, season after season, touching 50, sometimes 60 goals, redefining physical longevity and obsession with the scoreboard. So here's the question no one wanted to ask. If football was only about numbers, why did Ferguson hesitate to reduce greatness to goals, and what exactly did he see that most of us didn't? The confession didn't come in a press conference. There was no dramatic headline, no viral clip prepared in advance. It came quietly, almost accidentally, during a long conversation about football legacy. When Ferguson was asked about modern greatness, about whether today's stars would survive in past eras, he paused. Not the pause of hesitation, the pause of someone choosing his words carefully. And then he shifted the conversation away from goals, away from trophies, away from numbers. He spoke about control, about fear, about moments when a bench goes silent because one player touches the ball. That's when the comparison became unavoidable. On one side, Cristiano Ronaldo, the ultimate product of obsession. A player who turns chances into goals, pressure into fuel, and the scoreboard into a personal battlefield. When Ronaldo is on the pitch, defenders think about one thing: the finish. On the other, Lionel Messi, a different kind of threat. One that doesn't announce itself. One that doesn't wait for the box. One that changes the geometry of the game before a shot is even taken. Ferguson didn't say one was better, but he made something clear. One player attacks the result, the other attacks the game itself. And for a manager, those are not the same thing. When Ferguson said that people were counting goals and missing what decides history, he wasn't being poetic. He was being brutally practical. For him, the decisive thing was control. Not possession, not statistics. Control over fear. He explained it in a way only a manager could. Some players wait for the game to give them moments. Others take moments and force the game to adapt around them. This is where his logic became uncomfortable. Because goals, as spectacular as they are, usually arrive at the end of a sequence. They are conclusions. But domination happens before the shot. Messi's presence changes where defenders stand. It changes when midfielders press. It changes how a fullback hesitates for half a second, and half a second at elite level is an eternity. Ferguson described it as silent authority. No gestures, no demands, no chest pounding. Just a constant sensation that the match is slipping out of your hands. Ronaldo, in contrast, represents visible danger. You see it coming. You prepare for it, you double mark, you block shots, you survive, until you don't. And here's the uncomfortable truth Ferguson hinted at. As a defender, you fear conceding a goal. As a manager, you fear losing control of the game. One fear hits the scoreboard. The other rewrites the match. And history, Ferguson implied, remembers the second one longer. This is where Ferguson's view stops being an opinion and starts sounding like history repeating itself. Football has always remembered scorers, but it has revered controllers. Think of the players managers feared most, not because of one action, but because of everything they disrupted. Johan Cruyff didn't just score, he rearranged space. Xavi didn't just pass, he suffocated opponents with rhythm. Zinedine Zidane didn't chase numbers, he slowed time. Ferguson had faced these archetypes before, and he recognized the pattern instantly. Great scorers break records, great controllers break systems. That's why, in Ferguson's eyes, Messi fits a lineage that goes beyond eras. He forces teams to abandon plans they spent weeks preparing. He drags defenders out of position without touching the ball. He creates panic through inevitability. Ronaldo, by contrast, belongs to a different historical category: the apex predator, the ultimate finisher, the man who survives eras by adapting his body, his positioning, his role. History respects that, but it fears something else more. Managers can design schemes to limit shots. They can sacrifice players to block zones. They can accept pressure. What they cannot plan for is a player who quietly owns the game's pulse. That is why Ferguson never reduced greatness to goals, because history doesn't belong only to those who end actions, but to those who decide how the game is played. This is where Ferguson's confession becomes almost uncomfortable for modern football, because today, everything is measured. Heat maps, expected goals, touches in the box, sprints per game. The modern fan scrolls statistics the way managers once watched tape, and yet Ferguson's warning cuts straight through this obsession. Data tells you what happened. It rarely explains why everyone panicked before it happened. Messi's influence often appears invisible on spreadsheets. A defender takes 2 steps back instead of pressing. A midfielder refuses to leave his zone. A backline sinks 5 meters deeper without instruction. Those decisions don't count as assists. They don't register as key passes, but they decide matches before the final ball is played. Ronaldo, on the other hand, dominates the data world. His numbers are loud. His impact explodes at the decisive moment. And in a football economy built on highlights and outcomes, that is powerful. But Ferguson's point was never about choosing sides. It was about perspective. If football is reduced to outputs, Ronaldo's case is overwhelming. If football is understood as a living system, Messi becomes harder to measure and harder to replace. And that's why this debate refuses to die. Because one fits perfectly into the age of data, the other exposes its limits. So maybe Sir Alex Ferguson didn't end the Messi-Ronaldo debate. Maybe he made it deeper and more uncomfortable. Because once you stop counting goals and start watching control, football changes shape. One player conquers scoreboards, the other conquers games themselves. And history? History remembers both, but not in the same way. Now the question is yours. Does greatness belong to the man who finishes the story, or the one who writes it before anyone else touches the ball? Tell us what you think in the comments. Like the video, share it with someone who still thinks football is only about goals, and subscribe, because the next silence to be broken might change everything.